The most dangerous empath is the one with an INJ, INFJ brain. Carl Jung psychology. It was the early 1900s when Jung met a man, let's call him Dr. K, who came to him not because he was sick, but because he felt cursed by knowing too much. Dr. K said he carried more understanding than any person should. He saw through feelings. He understood people's choices before they made them. Jung was curious and uneasy. Dr. K had the qualities of two kinds of minds that in modern language we might recognize as INJ and INFJ. He had an intense sensitivity, almost psychic with emotion. And he also had the sharp, logical, far-seeing mind that could map out where emotions come from, how people react, and even predict how people would behave in future. It was as if he had built an internal engine that could scan someone's life, their fears, the defenses they built, the invisible triggers and unhealed pain, and then know exactly which buttons to press to make something inside them stir. In one of their sessions, Jung was stunned. Dr. K described emotions Jung had never shared. Then, before Jung even thought to ask, Dr. K knew what Jung's next 3 questions would be. Jung felt exposed, as though someone had taken apart his emotional machinery and studied it. He felt both awed and frightened. Because this wasn't just feeling with empathy. It was seeing, knowing, and having the power to intervene, either to heal or to manipulate. Jung realized he was witnessing something rare, an empath who could do much more than absorb others' pain or joy. Dr. K had what Jung would call architectural empathy, the ability to perceive the full emotional map of another person and, if he chose, redesign parts of it. That made him enormously powerful and dangerous. Not evil, necessarily, but dangerous because power used without care can harm. After observing Dr. K over months and years, Jung sketched out what this kind of person is like. First, they recognize patterns in people almost immediately. They do not just sense sadness or anger. They trace them back to childhood wounds, to repeated habits, to the why behind someone's reactions. They also see what might happen in the future, how someone will respond in relationships, what triggers will cause emotional pain. The empathic sensitivity is raw material. Intuition is the tool. Second, they build mental models of people. If I say this to them, they'll do X. If they think that, they'll act in such a way. It's like having a blueprint of someone's emotional structure, knowing which parts are fragile, which parts are hardened, where there is defense, where there is longing. With many people, this takes time or close friendship. These empaths do this quickly, often before most people have even opened up. Third, and this is what chills Jung most, they can choose how and when to use what they've seen. They might soothe someone's fear, or they might push, provoke, destabilize. They might heal or corrupt. Sometimes just with their presence, with small words timed just so, they can shift someone's sense of themselves, shift beliefs. And they often do this so subtly that no one enjoys being manipulated, but they don't realize it happened until later, or ever. Jung wondered, what becomes of a person with this combination? For many years he watched 3 paths emerge. Some people collapse under it. They feel the weight of seeing everyone's emotional lives all the time. They feel responsible for outcomes they can foresee, but can't control. Anxiety, depression, isolation follow. They want to turn it off, but don't know how. They retreat. They burn out. Others use it in a well-meaning way. They want to heal. They become counselors or guides. Their skill is so strong, however, that they can fall into the trap of making other people depend on them. People seek them out because they can anticipate what they need. But dependence is its own prison. Sometimes the helper becomes indispensable, and that creates power dynamics that are unhealthy. Then there are those who misuse it. For control, for personal gain, for manipulation. They might cloak their influence in kindness. They may believe they're helping, but often the hidden motives, fear, the need to be needed, desire for admiration, or just the thrill of power, take over. Finally, in rare cases, Jung believed someone can grow into what might be called a sovereign empath. This is someone who integrates the gift. They learn strong boundaries. They remain deeply feeling and intuitive, but choose when to engage those abilities, when not to. They don't act from need or ego, but from compassion and wisdom. They heal without controlling. They see deeply, but allow others room to grow. He also noticed that people around such empaths have mixed reactions. Some feel uneasy, because such empaths seem to see through them. Others, especially people who themselves are in pain or hiding, may feel exposed. Sometimes this leads to admiration, sometimes to fear, sometimes to resentment or fleeing. And often, those with personality troubles are drawn to or frightened of these empaths, because being seen so fully is both a relief and a threat. Jung thought the most difficult part for someone with this gift is maintaining authenticity of their own self. Many become so focused on reading other people that they lose contact with their own inner emotional world. They question, am I acting ethically? Am I using this to help or to feel powerful? Do I really know what my own heart wants, or have I become a tool for others' emotions? To avoid losing their way, Jung believed such a person must cultivate certain inner practices, though he did not lay them out in detail. Much of what follows is extrapolation. Recognize the shadow. Admit to oneself the times when one's gift has been used for control or superiority. Build strong boundaries. Not always reading others. Not always sharing insight, even if so much is known inside. Let people have privacy. Let oneself have rest. Keep a moral framework. Decide what one will and will not do with the knowledge one gains. Consent matters. Free will of others matters. Make time to reconnect with own feelings, with one's own wounds, joys, and vulnerabilities, not always as a tool for helping others, but for oneself. In Jung's final reflections, he believed that persons who can combine empathic depth and strategic insight are rare, but among humanity's most important. If they are guided well, they have potential to help society heal unseen wounds, to bring people into awareness of what really hurts, to guide transformation. But if they are ungrounded or unwise, they can become architects of emotional prisons, whether small or large. Jung never clearly wrote about INJ/INFJ empaths exactly in this way. This story is partly hypothetical, but it draws on many of his ideas about empathy, intuition, unconscious patterns, and the danger and promise of deep psychological insight. It shows how a rare mind can be both blessed and burdened, with a path toward destruction or transformation, and how much the journey depends on how one handles power, choice, and integrity. To avoid losing their way, Jung believed such a person must cultivate certain inner practices, though he did not lay them out in detail. Much of what follows is extrapolation. Recognize the shadow. Admit to oneself the times when one's gift has been used for control or superiority. Build strong boundaries. Not always reading others. Not always sharing insight, even if so much is known inside. Let people have privacy. Let oneself have rest. Keep a moral framework. Decide what one will and will not do with the knowledge one gains. Consent matters. Free will of others matters. Make time to reconnect with own feelings, with one's own wounds, joys, and vulnerabilities, not always as a tool for helping others, but for oneself. In Jung's final reflections, he believed that persons who can combine empathic depth and strategic insight are rare, but among humanity's most important. If they are guided well, they have potential to help society heal unseen wounds, to bring people into awareness of what really hurts, to guide transformation. But if they are ungrounded or unwise, they can become architects of emotional prisons, whether small or large. Jung never clearly wrote about INJ/INFJ empaths exactly in this way. This story is partly hypothetical, but it draws on many of his ideas about empathy, intuition, unconscious patterns, and the danger and promise of deep psychological insight. It shows how a rare mind can be both blessed and burdened, with a path toward destruction or transformation, and how much the journey depends on how one handles power, choice, and integrity. He reflected that authenticity can suffer terribly. When you are always watching others' emotional blueprints, responding, adapting, helping, sometimes the self becomes a ghost. You forget what you feel, what you desire, what your own struggles are. And in that forgetting, there's a hollow loneliness. Yet Jung also believed this burden could transform into something greater if the person honors their insights with humility, with self-care, with ethical restraint. If they recognize their shadows, Those parts of themselves that want control, fear unimportance, crave admiration, and make them conscious. If they build boundaries, knowing when to shut off the interpretive mind, when to just be present. If they allow themselves rest, allow themselves vulnerability, let others grow, even when they could see what the other person might do wrong. In those rare cases, Jung imagined that someone with this combination of empathic depth plus strategic mind could become a guardian of emotional development, not an emotional dictator. Someone who uses insight not for power but for service. Someone who helps others awaken, rather than shaping them in their own image. Their presence becomes a safe space for authenticity, a mirror held gently rather than a tool wielded. Sometimes in Jung's writing you see echoes of all this. The shadow must be integrated. We must confront parts of ourselves that we reject. Individuation means becoming whole, including light and dark, recognizing projection, seeing in others what we deny in ourselves. Mentalsen +3 Dreamora.app +3 The Society of Analytical Psychology +3. In Jung's view, then, this kind of empath strategist is a double-edged existence. Their capacity can be their torture or their salvation. What will determine which path they go depends on whether they face their own shadows, whether they develop discipline, whether they stay connected with their true self even while seeing into others. Whether they stay connected with their true self even while seeing into others. In the quiet corners of the world, where thoughts and feelings intertwine, there exists a rare and profound sensitivity, an ability to perceive the unspoken, to understand the depths of another's soul. This gift, possessed by INTJ and INFJ empaths, is both a blessing and a challenge. Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist, observed that some individuals with such heightened empathic abilities misuse their insights to manipulate or control others. These individuals, whom Jung referred to as emotional architects of oppression, use their understanding of others to create dependency or elevate themselves above others. The critical difference between those who misuse their abilities and those who use them ethically lies in what Jung termed empathic humility. This concept emphasizes recognizing that possessing deep insights into others doesn't make one superior. Instead, it calls for using such insights to support others' authentic growth without imposing one's own agenda. Jung believed that INTJ and INFJ empaths require distinct relationship strategies due to their unique psychological capabilities. He identified certain traits in individuals who could engage in safe and meaningful relationships with these empaths. Comfort with psychological discussions without becoming defensive. Ability to maintain their own emotional boundaries while being understood deeply. Intellectual curiosity about psychological patterns without attempting to use that knowledge manipulatively. Comfort in discussing their own darker aspects without shame. Jung also noted that these empaths thrive in relationships with individuals who are at similar levels of psychological development. Such relationships, characterized by mutual psychological transparency, allow both parties to see and be seen clearly, fostering equality and understanding. Intellectual partnerships where psychological insights are shared and discussed openly. Creative collaborations where empathic insights serve artistic or innovative expression. Mentorship roles where their abilities can guide willing participants. Service-oriented relationships where their insights contribute to collective healing rather than personal control. Jung emphasized the importance of these empaths seeking communities that understand their experiences. Such communities include other integrated INTJ and INFJ empaths, individuals engaged in serious psychological or spiritual development work, creative communities where insight is valued and channeled constructively, and service-oriented groups where empathic abilities can serve collective rather than personal goals. He warned against maintaining relationships with psychologically unconscious individuals out of guilt or obligation, as these relationships often become either manipulative or draining. The transformation from a potentially dangerous INTJ or INFJ empath to an integrated and sovereign empath follows predictable stages, each with specific challenges and breakthroughs.
1.
The overwhelm crisis. Empaths begin by feeling flooded with psychological insights they can't control, leading to social withdrawal, anxiety, or depression. The breakthrough occurs when they realize their abilities are not a curse but raw material for development. The power temptation. As they learn to manage their abilities, these empaths often discover they can influence others easily. The crisis comes when they realize they're manipulating even with good intentions. The ethical wrestling. This crucial stage involves confronting their shadow, developing ethical frameworks, and learning to act from wisdom rather than ego. The boundary mastery. Successful empaths learn conscious permeability, the ability to choose when to engage their empathic insights and when to simply be present. They develop empathic discipline, using their abilities intentionally rather than compulsively. The authentic integration. The final stage involves reconnecting with their own emotional truth while maintaining their empathic abilities. They become sovereign empaths, individuals who can see clearly, feel deeply, and act wisely without being corrupted by their power. Jung identified several traps that could destroy even well-intentioned INTJ and INFJ empaths during their integration journey. The savior complex trap. Using empathic insights to rescue people from their own psychological processes, thereby robbing them of necessary growth experiences. The intellectual superiority trap. Believing that psychological insight equals superiority over those who lack such insight, leading to emotional isolation and ethical corruption. The control addiction trap. Becoming addicted to predicting and influencing outcomes rather than allowing others their own psychological journeys, destroying authentic relationships and corrupting the empath's own development. The authenticity loss trap. Becoming so skilled at reading and responding to others that they lose touch with their own authentic emotions and needs, leading to empathic dissociation and eventual profound emptiness. To avoid these traps, Jung suggested maintenance practices such as regular solitude for authentic self-connection, creative expression that bypasses analytical thinking, relationships with other integrated empaths, and service work that channels abilities toward collective rather than personal benefit. Jung's final insight about INTJ and INFJ empaths was perhaps his most profound. He believed they represented an evolutionary development in human consciousness necessary for our species' psychological advancement. Jung wrote, "These individuals possess the psychological tools necessary to understand and heal the deep collective wounds that plague humanity. They can see the patterns that create suffering and, when properly integrated, can guide others towards psychological freedom." He saw them as essential for what he called collective individuation, the process by which entire cultures and societies move toward greater psychological maturity. Jung concluded that INTJ and INFJ empaths are not accidents of nature, but evolutionary necessities. Their danger lies not in their abilities, but in their potential corruption. When integrated, they become the healers our world desperately needs. The choice between becoming an architect of healing or a constructor of psychological prisons shapes not just their destiny, but potentially the consciousness evolution of our entire species. If you recognize yourself in Jung's description of the INTJ and INFJ empath, remember that your development of empathic sovereignty isn't just personal growth, it's service to human consciousness itself.